Hola, amigas. I'm Norma, your host here in the Latinas en Libros book club. Welcome to this month's Latinas en Libros book chat series. This month is a special edition because we're celebrating this new and exciting read that's filled with beautiful poetry. So it's only right that today we deviate a little bit from our standard Q&A, and instead we ask that the author herself perform some live poetry featuring some of her selected works from this amazing collection. I'm so honored to introduce to you this month's Latinas en Libros featured author, Melania Luisa Marte. Next week, Melania's book, Plantains and Are Becoming, hits the bookstores, and we're giving you a sneak peek of what you can expect. Plantains and Are Becoming looks at the identities and histories of the Dominican Republic and Haiti to celebrate and center the Black diaspora through the exploration of themes like self-love, nationalism, displacement, general trauma, and ancestral knowledge. This collection uproots stereotypes while creating a new, joyous version and vision for Black identity and personhood. Melania, welcome to Latinas en Libros, and thank you for sharing space with us today.
Hi, everyone. Yes, thank you, Norma. This is such a beautiful experience. So Norma was like getting me together behind the scenes because I was like running here. But thank you. No, it's just, We All Girl actually has given me so many, Anna and We All Girl has given me so many beautiful opportunities, and honestly has been super monumental, more than you guys even know, in my career as a poet. And I'm just super grateful. I love the community. My girl Yessi is here, so I'm always excited to be in any chat room with Yessi. So yeah, it's so beautiful. So thank you for having me, and I'm so excited to dig into the poems.
Yes, I'm so excited to share, to explore them, to learn more. I'm excited for us to have our amigas be here and ask questions at the end. And just thanks again for joining us. I know that as a busy person, as an author, so this is your debut book. It's coming out next week. So amigas, you are all getting a super special treat because you're here today. And you're also a parent. You have a million things on your plate. And, de todo corazón, we're so happy to have you. So thank you for being here today. I'm so excited to chat with you about your debut. So let's jump right in. So can you tell us?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready.
Let's do it. Can you tell us a little bit more about where the idea for this poetry collection was born?
Yeah, so Plantains and Are Becoming really started. I was literally in the middle of the pandemic. I was living in the Dominican Republic with my husband at the time. He's still my husband, but we were living on the island, and things had just stalled. Things had just shut down, and I made the choice to stay on the island. And it was probably the best decision I made. And I think this collection really wouldn't have come if I had left the island. This collection would have been completely different. But it turned into this, just me sitting in a rocking chair, looking out at my backyard. And at the time, my husband and I decided to start farming my mother's land. She has like 4 acres of land that's just been abandoned for years. And we decided, let's turn it into something beautiful, right? So we were arranging the plantains, the plátanos. I don't know if folks know this, but plantains grow, they reproduce pretty quickly. And so the plantains were just growing and growing and growing, and we wanted to just give them space to grow. So we were replanting them. And then a few days before that, a storm had hit. So many of the plantains had kind of fallen down and stuff like that. And I was just sitting there, just in my rocking chair. Usually in the mornings, if I'm on the island, I like to just, watch the sunrise and just do some writing. And that's when I feel like I write the clearest. And I was just sitting there and just like rocking in my chair. And I was looking out at them, and like the plantains just looked so peaceful. It was just so dewy and so fresh. And I was just like, wow, like if I could channel that energy, what kind of poems would I write? And that's really where the collection started, where it was just like, look at these plantains. They're just like they've been through the worst. They've been through a terrible storm that almost turned into a
Yeah.
whole hurricane situation on the island. They have been through inundation, they've been through droughts, they've been through all these things, and yet here they are still thriving and still surviving. And I wanted to kind of just figure out what that message and how I could amplify that message through poetry and through the story of the plantains. And it's really where I decided to kind of listen to them and also listen to what I could learn from them and how I could channel that and channel them and turn it into something much deeper and much bigger than all of us. And really the story of the plantains is the story of all of us who come from the soil, all of us who carry our ancestry, all of us who, you know, want to really ground ourselves in our truth and never forget the sacrifices of our ancestors and the material consequences of living in a society that is you know, constantly trying to exterminate us. And so I really wanted to channel that into something much bigger than me, much bigger than the plantains, and something that we could all carry along with us when we, you know, choose to speak our truth, to live our truth, and to never cower to fear, never cower to hate and you know, division and all of these isms and all of the things that we're currently seeing in our political climate, of just a hatred towards who we are and who our people are and the sacrifices our people make and just the desire to want to live and thrive and survive. And so I hope that when folks read this collection, they'll kind of just, you know, I call it, you know, keeping that thing on you. You know, you want to keep that thing on you. And by thing, I mean, you know, strength and perseverance and all of the teachings of your ancestors, your grandmas, your abuelitos. Like you really want to carry that with you everywhere you go, because honestly, I think that if we don't remember where we come from, how can we actually truly honor and move forward and be grounded as we move forward and be present? And so I really want us all to kind of gain something from this collection.
Oh, that's so, so beautiful. I can tell you that I felt so empowered and so moved by your words. The pieces, the poems in this collection are equal parts powerful, moving, loving. I mean, I've underlined so many pieces and so many lines. But let me ask you, when when you were writing this, it's so, I'd imagine it's so close to your heart. How did you know you were ready to share this particular body of work with your readers?
Um, I didn't really feel like I was ready, honestly. I was actually really scared. And even when I shared these poems with my agents and they were like, oh, well, we're ready. We're ready to shop. We're ready to, you know, take it off to auction. And I was pregnant. And something about being pregnant while I was writing this collection also made it super vulnerable and super just intimate and just I was just so, but I was also really in tune. I was so like present. I was so just nurturing to myself and to my baby and to the poems that I was writing. And I think when I think of the plantains, and a friend of mine who actually read this collection said, you know, the plantains feel so feminine as we're reading them. And I said, well, I think when I think about the plantains, I think about the way they reproduce. I think about the way they just survive. I think there is something very feminine about them. And it's not to say that, you know, because we call it plátanos, and plátanos is like the masculine, you know, of the
Right.
language. But to me, I think plátanos are one of the most feminine plants we have, because I think of the way that they just before they bear fruit, they are already reproducing their offspring. Because you know, when you cut off the plantain's fruit, the mama dies. And you're literally, it's an infinite amount of just resistance to die off. It's just like you're constantly
Yeah.
reproducing, you're infinite. So I think of the beauty of that, and I'm just like, I'll take that. If you know, folks read this collection and like, it's a very feminine color. I'm like, well, I'm a very feminine person, and I'm also very in tune with wanting to have women feel empowered, you know, and to want and to have, you know, the women in my family, the matatanas in my life, to feel good when they read this. And so I didn't write it from a very feminine, like, oh, I want this to be a feminine collection, but I did write it with women in mind. And
Mhm.
with the women in my family in mind, and I wanted for them to be proud of this collection and to feel seen and to feel uplifted. And so I think we live in a very masculine society anyways. So I'm like, that's
Yes.
okay if folks read it and are just like, oh, it's a very feminine thing. But there are very poems that I think are just transcend gender, transcend race. A lot of the poems are really just about wanting for folks to see your humanity and wanting for
Yes.
folks to humanize your ancestors and to cherish their stories and their sacrifices, and also to, you know, to be honest about our history. Because I think that one of the things I struggled with writing this collection is how do I, tell my truth and also um tell my ancestors truth, right? And it's
Yeah.
hard because I have a lot of questions that I don't really necessarily have folks that can answer to them, but I really tried to sorry, that's my toddler throwing a fit. I
No
tried to
need to
like
apologize. We
channel
understand.
that. But
Yeah,
I hope that answered your question.
it absolutely did. So, and one of the things that you said really prompted me to think how you've written for many years. How did you select the poems that came into this particular collection? Because there's definitely, I feel like there is a theme. There are a couple of themes throughout the collection. And so if you could just talk to us a little bit more about your selection process.
Yeah, so the first poem I wrote, it's actually really small. It's called On Becoming, and it says, the divinity of the universe never failed her, and yet she grew skeptical. We don't know when God became a storm she feared, but here she was, a disheveled palm tree uprooted. And so I kind of used
Mhm.
that poem as the central theme throughout the collection. And when I decided, when we divided the collection into three parts, which is part one, Daughter of Diaspora, which is poems on identity, part two, the history of plantains, which is where we dig into the history of the plantains as well as the history of African descendants. And then part three, where we talk about On Becoming, which is poems about love, about joy, about resistance, about rest. I really decided that it made sense to kind of let the poems flow wherever they would. So I didn't really write poems with like part one or part two or part three in mind. I just wrote poems that I felt I needed to get out of my system, and then in ways they kind of turned into one of the three parts. But I really focused on using that small central poem as like, okay, here's this person, here's this plantain, just falling apart, uprooted. Where do they go from there? Where does she go from there? How can she find herself? How can the plantains go back to what keeps them rooted, right? To what keeps them here, what keeps them present, and how do they survive, right? In the midst of so much trauma, how do they survive? How do they keep growing? How do they stay so green, so healthy, right? And so that kind of just takes a world of its own.
I feel like that line of inquiry is so powerful and it really comes through in the collection. So thank you. Thank you for
So
asking those questions. And thank you for having that front and center so that all readers can walk away with a sense of how do we survive? How can we be both resilient and soft and joyous, which I think
yeah.
is so, so important. So before we move on to your wonderful performance, can we just talk really quickly about this cover?
Our
Okay.
cover girl, yeah.
I mean, I love it. It's so beautiful. Can you tell
Mhm.
us a little bit more about the cover art? How does the cover relate to the book and the major themes discussed in it?
Yeah, so I didn't really ask to have much input. I just really told them, my publishers, I said, when they asked me like, what have you envisioned for the cover? I said I wanted a woman, and I wanted her to be looking, just kind of towards her future, and then I obviously plantain somehow involved into the theme, and so they chose the plantain leaves, the palm leaves, and I when I saw it, I was like, she's our girl. And they gave me a few options, and I looked and I was like, she is our girl. She is that girl.
Yeah.
And the designer, I believe, I forget her name. She's on here somewhere. Um, the interior art. So the leaves are by Yulia Kashchuk, and the photo is actually a stock photo, and they kind of took away the background and kind of turned it into this beautiful woman, just like with the leaves. And she's just like, she's like turned, like when I look at it, I feel like the leaves and her are one, they become one. And so I'm really kind of obsessed.
So am
And
I. I am totally obsessed. It's so beautiful. And I feel like it gives the reader a look into what's happening. We're along for the ride. And she's
yeah,
so powerful. I'm like, I want whatever she's eating. Thanks. I'll have two, please. Two.
she's eating her plátanos all right. And I wanted
How do
to
I
shout
get
out
some of those?
the cover designer. Her name is Vian Nguyen. I believe that's how it's pronounced. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, Vian. But she's amazing and she works for Penguin. And I'm just like, hello. She's
Yeah.
just
It's a
beautiful.
beautiful cover. I had to ask you about it because it's so powerful. And because so many of the amigas here, I'm sure are going to love to have this book out on the table because it's beautiful. The
Yeah.
contents, the cover, all
I
of it.
hope so.
Okay, look,
Share with everyone. Tell everyone to read.
yes, please,
Reading is
amigas.
fun.
That's right. That's right. Well, listen, Melania, we are here to support your work and we're so grateful for your time. So, amigas, Melania has generously agreed to perform a few of her poems without further plática, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so this, I believe the first one is Immigrant Math Problem. Immigrant Math Problem. If I give Mama 5,000 pesos and Mama gives 3,000 pesos to Theo for groceries and gas, and Theo gives 1,000 pesos to La Colmadera for food, 500 pesos to El Pompeador for gas, and 500 pesos to his son, and La Colmadera gives 200 pesos to her daughter for motoconcho fare to ride to school, and El Pompeador gives 300 pesos to his wife for breakfast and dinner ingredients. And Mama leaves 2,000 pesos for a small emergency and keeps X amount of pesos in some nook and cranny she calls a bank. And the bank is her home because she says the bank that's owned by the government is unsafe. And at least in her home, she keeps the money buried right next to her loaded gun. And how much more money do you think we will collectively need to erase the centuries of disenfranchisement that plagues us? Mommy and Mama have always taught me money is like a waterfall for people like us. It must trickle down or else some of us will drown of thirst. I want a math problem that will teach me to make enough to save us all. So that's Immigrant Math Problem.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for reading that for us.
Thank you.
When I was reading it, I couldn't help but to wonder what inspired this poem. Where were you? What was happening? I'm making all these notes. I'm like, what's happening? How did this come about? I want to know everything.
Yeah, so it really came about because I wanted to include a poem that talks about money and immigrants. And I really wanted us to be honest about the ways that, for me, being a first generation American, I always feel indebted to my community, to my parents, to making sure they're good, to my grandparents. And my mom, her whole life being one of the only, one of three folks that were here in the United States, she's always sending money back. That was like her livelihood. It was like her livelihood and her family's livelihood back on the island. And I think about also living on the island, I learned a lot about how much the Dominican Republic depends on the US dollar. And I saw it in real time living on the island, where when tourism stopped, when folks were having a hard time in the States and couldn't send money to the island, I mean, things were hard for folks over there. And so I really saw that in real time living through the pandemic in the Dominican Republic. And so I really wanted to talk about how can we have those honest conversations about the ways, our folks are disenfranchised and still trying to keep the lights on and still keeping other folks' lights on, right? And still sending money back home and sacrificing things, luxuries, small luxuries that they could have here in the States, just so they can send $50, $100, $200 back to their home countries. And so I really wanted to, create that conversation around all of the sacrifices, our parents, our grandparents, all of our family members make to be able to just go to sleep at night knowing that their parents aren't going hungry back in whatever country they're from, knowing that my mom was like, in terms of school supplies, things like that. My mom would buy my cousin's school supplies because they started school in August and we started in September. She'd be like, okay, I got enough to send them, so they got their school supplies, and then I got you guys in September. And sometimes we would go to school a few days late because like her money, she had to pinch and figure it out how to make sure that they were good and that we were also good. And so I think about that a lot, in terms of our relationship to money. It's much more communal than it is than the typical white person
Right. The typical like American.
Exactly. And so I really wanted to have that conversation because so many folks, so many of my friends and family are constantly trying to figure out how to juggle, right? How to juggle what they need, and their savings and things like that, and also how to still be present and help out folks that they know are having a hard time back, in their home country.
Yeah, it's trying to balance that pinch between individual behavior and collective communal behavior. And it's something that I feel like as first gen, second gen kids, it's something that we experience so close to home because we know what that struggle is. We see it, we live it in a way that other people may not. But yeah. I loved this poem. I also wanted to ask, what were you hoping the reader will take away from this particular piece? Is it like
I need for folks to remember that like everybody doesn't have a trust fund, everybody doesn't have like, rich parents that they can lean on. Like some of us, we're our parents' retirement fund,
That's
so
right.
that's like an important conversation.
Yes, I know that feeling.
Yeah, it's real. And so, when we think about like why it's so important for Latina women to get paid what they deserve, it's because of that. It's because when we get paid, we're not only setting ourselves up, we're setting everybody in our families up. And so it's like so important to be honest about that because, I've never been, I don't know what that's like. I don't know what it's like to just think about myself. That's just never been a thing. And it's not a thing in my family. And so
people do that. People do that. I need that drink.
And so, yeah, so it's like super important for us to like demand what we're worth and to get paid what we're worth, because when we are set, our hood is set, our communities are set, our people, everybody is set, because we make sure everybody's good.
I love that. I love that. Okay, without further ado, are you ready for the next one?
Yes, I got them bookmarked. They're ready.
Okay.
Okay, poem number 2. Okay, this is called Hecha Completa. Just prepare yourselves. Hecha Completa. There are resorts on the island where the women vacation in hospital beds, closets of fajas, sutures, IV fluids, disinfecting gauze, soup containers, and massage oil. Enter, and all becomes one big fat blur. Like factories, Barbies enter waxy blobs of insecurities and exit hecha completa, a flesh piñata of new skin, new body, new attitude. Suddenly, they hear beautiful and believe it. They hear bad bitch and think me. It's possible to be as flawless as I want to be, to own my body and a part of this earth, to demand equity and power. They can finally look in the mirror and see value, see a whole woman unbutchered by the stench of rumoring flies and flaws. What does it mean to be cut open in order to be made complete? When I say beautiful, what I mean is the thread of my body is unraveling itself into a war factory of roses. May they stain and scare all those who dare touch. My body hears perfect and morphs into a pink submachine gun. My waist hears invisible and snatches itself into a belt of spikes. My lips hear lovable and grind the tears of ex-lovers into dust. My body smiles with sharpened teeth, unflinching and on. What does it mean to weaponize your body in order to bear the weight of this existence? In cases of pre-war, an increase in war probability tends to decrease stock prices, but the ultimate outbreak of war increases them. There are empty factories of machinery waiting for their value to be appreciated. Our bodies as is are waiting to be appreciated. How they hold all our insides and then some, how they forgive the butcher and reprieve the soul. Some folks need war to feel peace, and sometimes swallowing all that has tried to kill us is enough. What does it mean to need trauma to feel alive? It's brave, you know, to know the pain and choose it every single time, as long as the rent gets paid and the babies get fed and luxury is within reach, as long as someone sees this body and thinks it worth loving, worth fighting a war, worth the exchange of money. What does it mean to be a working body in a society that demands perfection? When I was 16, I wished for a nose job in lipo. I never told my mother, who could barely afford to gift me life, that I wanted to be just like her, hecha completa, with a body that was either made by God or godly made. Grant me access to pretty things from which to thrive. If we could eat beauty, how delicious it would be to devour all the lovely and finally feel complete. What does it mean to the human condition to fix what is never enough? When our bodies talk, how violent it be.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a heavy one.
And mind-blowing, mujer. It's heavy and it's empowering because it makes us question these deeply, deeply embedded personal and societal beauty standards that so many of us ascribe to at one point or another in our lives, that our lovers, that our mothers, that our children, that our parents hold us to. So this to me felt like a piece that begs us to really investigate the narrative that we tell ourselves. And it also sounds like a love letter to self, if I've ever heard one. What was going on? Dime todo, mujer, cuéntame.
Yeah, I'm actually getting emotional thinking about it because I wrote that after I had my baby, and I was dealing with so much postpartum depression and just like body dysmorphia, and I was just going through it. And also I wrote that because I wanted to have that conversation with my friends. So many of my friends have gotten work done, and I'm just like, it breaks my heart because they're so beautiful. And so I'm just like, how can you not see it? How do you not see it? How do you not see that you are literally a walking goddess? And it's just the society we live in that just contorts you and makes you feel so, if you're not photoshopped 100% of the time, you feel like you're just literally going to shrivel up and die, and that no one thinks you're worthy, no one thinks you're lovable. And I really wanted for women to just read that, and just, if they're considering, if they're considering altering their body, to really consider, who are they altering it for? Is it for me, or is it just for society to accept me, to make me feel worthy? Like, there's so many layers to that. And so, I mean, I just feel like, that's something I've been, questioning for myself. Like, what does completeness feel like? What is becoming? What is real healing look like for me? And I really had to go to the mirror. I really had to look in the mirror and be like, you're gorgeous, you're beautiful, and truly believe it, truly embody it and believe it, because we live in a society that is constantly telling us we'll never be enough, we'll never be perfect, we'll never be beautiful, our bodies won't be enough. There's so many layers. And so I really just wanted something that spoke to that and was honest about that, and also let folks know, like, how to do it.
I love that. This was such a moving piece. I really couldn't, for me, the questions felt like such an invitation to have a conversation, not just with others, but really almost more importantly with self, and to really sort of bring that spotlight inward. There are, as you mentioned, there are so many ways in which society, our loved ones, our community tells us we are not enough. And so for me, this piece really spoke to, who are we when we look at ourselves? Who are we? How can we find beauty within ourselves and not feel the need to judge ourselves or our sisters or our daughters or our mothers or la vecina to these standards that really only tear us apart? I mean, I had to put it down. When I read this, I had to put it down. I was like, oh,
yeah.
so
I also, I didn't want women, because if they've had surgery, because my mom's had surgery. That's why to me it's so personal, this poem, Hecha Completa, because my mom went through a really scary situation. She had an infection with her surgery. She got some lipo done and a tummy tuck, and she ended up catching an infection, and she ended up having to go ICU and like this whole thing. And she tells me, she's like, don't do it. It's not worth, your life, like, it's like, you're fine, you're more than enough. And so, but she always reminds me of that, of like how scary it was for her, as like, cautionary tale. But I also think about, I want women, even if they have had surgery, to still consider, how do they gain completeness? How do they get to a space where, if you've had the surgeries, if you haven't had the surgeries, if you're thinking about the surgeries, how do you get to a space where you're like, listen, this is the body I was born with, and God damn it, I'm gonna rock it. I'm gonna work with what I got at whatever stage, and that's something that, it's like, we're only supposed to love our bodies if we're like rail thin and like, like working out 100 times a day. Like, no, like, you're supposed to love your body because it keeps you alive. Like, it is this magical thing. It's like, we're so lucky to even be here. And so I really just wanted to channel that until I remind us ourselves that we're not machinery.
No,
we're made in such a beautiful, magical way, and we're not machines, we're not robots. We're just meant to be here, alive and green and beautiful.
that's right. And we're beautiful just the way we are, with all of the nuances and details and curves and dimples and ganas and manchas, and with all of it, that's what brings, I think, beauty. That's when we can see ourselves and recognize that, and see others and recognize that. That's, I think, true beauty.
Oh, I see my girl Jenny. Hey, Jenny.
Yeah. I love it when friends come out and support friends. Okay, Melania, let's, I want to be mindful of time, and I really want to be able to have the amigas hear the other two poems. So let's move on to the next one.
Okay. Abuelita's Garden. Oh, I love this. This one has my whole heart.
This is beautiful.
Dios te me bendiga are her first words to her garden. Early mornings, after the roosters are done preaching and the dogs have stretched downward and long, their spines a half moon of fur and muscle, the birds chirp in search of crumbs and water. Pebbling through air and ground, they find Abuelita's basket of scraps left out for them to feed. In her garden, there's always something for someone to feed. No thing is left homeless. Dios te me bendiga. She glides through her garden, broom in hand, a thing hugging leaves and slim branches, an upended bouquet of shrub, greenery embracing a saged wooden pole. Everything about this woman could decompose and leave not a sight of ruin. I admire that. How much of this earth she honors and will one day become. There's a lesson in humility. Only those who have seen the bottom of an empty stomach can fathom. There's a lesson in survival. Only those who have seen the earth turn over and spill its fruits can witness. Mouth dry and aching. Many have found solace in my abuelita's garden. A water apple, a warm cup of coffee, a sweet sour sop, green bananas, a buttery avocado, an earthy cup of dragon tea, the world's best mangoes. Her garden is a multivitamin. Breakfast or dinner, each disciple lucky for the harvesting season. Ma abuelita, the apothecary, the curandera, the cook. Dios te me bendiga. After the wilderness is done rejoicing, it's her time to speak of God and miracles. Her plants dewy and grateful. Here is a mother who loves them as if they were birthed from her womb, and just as wise as the earth they rose from. Abuela affirms them before the sun affirms some more. Dios te me bendiga, mi negra bella, mi poeta, mi semilla, mi bendecida. Her blessings Her blessings are a garden of endless love. They tell me, live, live because you sprung from me. Live because I dare you to live and thrive. Thrive because the birds, the flowers, the reptiles, we all want to witness your glory. Abuelita's garden is my favorite reminder that you don't need to be one specific kind of magical to bloom. We are all becoming our best, greenest thing. We slouch and freeze. We stunt and cry. We look up and there's a star warming our skin. There's a hand blessing our flesh. From dust to depression, we become. From twirls and teachings, we rejoice. Dios te me bendiga. And we all bloom.
Ay, mujer, shout out to the abuelitas, to gardens, to love. This, I couldn't get over this one. I'm curious. So this poem is found in part 1, Daughter of the Diaspora section of your book. Can you tell us a little bit more about how your abuela's garden, if you could tell us a little bit more about your abuela's garden and how it informed your understanding of self and the Dominican Republic?
Yeah, so my abuelita's garden, okay, so my whole life she's had this garden. So
Yeah.
let's start there. So
Okay.
she's had this garden and has been growing these leaves, all of these plants, all of these amazing herbal remedies since before I was born. She has been living in this home and in this backyard where she has her garden since the 1990, I want to say, when my brother was born, because my mom got her that house right after she left. My dad bought it for her. So yeah, 1990, I want to say 1990. So I just feel like it's just so crazy because every time I'm like feeling unwell, I'm feeling sick, there's just something so healing about just having my abuelita make me a tea. I'll tell her my symptoms. But what she did, she's been a curandera for about 40, 50 years, but I tell her their symptoms and I'm like, oh, I have this. And then she's like, I got something for that. She'll grab some dragon leaves. She'll grab some soursop leaves. She'll grab whatever she can find, basil, mint, like she just has everything you can think of.
Yeah.
And she'll grab it. She adds some ginger, a little bit of cinnamon, whatever she thinks will help. And I just drink it. I'm instantly like, oh, I'm fine. Like I'm just healed. I'm just
Isn't
healed.
that
There's something
amazing?
about
It's like,
yeah, there's something about just sitting in her backyard, looking out at her garden, and I'm sitting in a rocking chair and I'm drinking this tea, and instantly I'm like, I know exactly what I need to do. I know exactly what's the root of my issues. I know exactly what I need to do to heal it. I have the answers. And so when I think of Abuelita's garden, I think of there's a garden in all of us. Everyone, we all have this garden in all of us. And we have the answers. And if we tap into our ancestors, we tap into our abuelitas or abuelitas, we tap into these, our mother's gardens, we tap into that. We have the answers and we have the means to know what to do, how to survive, how to make it, how to be healed and successful, and how to, be in our best mind state. And so when I think of Abuelita's garden, yes, it's obviously inspired by my abuelita, but it's also like the garden in us and how each of us can really, honor the heirlooms and teachings of the women in our families and really take that and hone in on that and cherish it and be grateful for it and what it can do for us and how it can heal us and remind us of where we come from and the power and how powerful we are.
I love that, Melania, the added layer. So in our conversation, I feel like I've learned so much about that one poem. And I absolutely adore this idea that we all have a garden within us that we can tap into. I also wanted to comment a little bit about how I think part of what makes abuelitas or gardens, and particularly gardens that belong to our ancestors, so special is the component of love. I think it's not just sort of the herbal, the plantas themselves, but it is also the love and the safety that comes with that environment that invites us to tap into our own knowings and, you know, like that beautiful umbilical cord that connects us all.
Yeah.
And that's really
Yeah, and it's
that's
yes,
what came
yeah.
to mind when I was reading it.
Yeah, it's the memories. It's also like the generational memories. Like, for example, my abuelito, may he rest in peace, he helped my abuelita, divide up the land and create all of these little areas for the gardens. And he actually, some of the plants that turned into trees that he planted, like his soursop tree is still there. And so often when I'm missing him, or that I go to this tree and I pick some fruit and I think about him, and it's just like this beautiful thing. And I think that we have to remember to also like carry, wherever we are around the world doing our thing and, doing these amazing things, we can carry our gardens with us, because they're right here with us. And so it's important that we like keep those memories, those blood memories inside of us and honor that. I think about how much of my abuelito's like his little sayings, or he actually played the guitar and he always had like a little bachata song that he would hum and things like that. And I think about how much I carry that of like always keeping that light spirit and that light humor within me. It's like those things, they keep us alive, and I think I've had to learn at a very young age to just kind of learn how to navigate death and grief. And my father passed away when I was 7, and so I've kind of always um had to learn to kind of carry those heirlooms within me, right? Those memories within me. And so when I think of Abuelita's garden, I also want folks to remember that, like, just because someone's not here, someone's passed, doesn't mean that they're not with you, and that, you can't, still honor all of the things that they hold, that, that help you, and remind you that you are loved and you're cherished and that you're protected, and that, it's not just you, right? You have all of these amazing people who have poured into you and have, planted little seeds in you that have helped you bloom. And so it's like, it's all encompassing.
Such a beautiful reminder, especially in this day and age where sometimes we can feel so disconnected from one another, from ourselves, from community, from ancestors. I think it's exactly the cafecito that we need, to that reminder that our gardens are within us and connect us to, my garden is connected to your garden, connected to your abuelita's garden, and so on. There's so much power in community in that way. And there's so much beauty to be held and safety to be found in these gardens. So I love that. Thank you so much for this. So I want to be really mindful of our time. We're almost at time, but I would love if you could share your last poem.
Yeah, this one's quick. Okay, self-portrait as a green goddess. For starters, this is a poem for the material girls, the darlings who need a little more than coffee to feel armed and fierce enough to face the day. It takes fashion, some kind of colorful fur if it's cold out, some sort of fruity patterned sundress that tells the world we ready to walk, 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 and strut. Because what choices do we have? Sit in the dark crying over X mini horrors for what, honey? It costs to shrink and it costs to grow, so you might as well unlatch big, wide, and flourish, just like a girl with a shoot system and a root system. And neither one of them got time for underconfidence. There's a world that wants you dry and brittle, so rebuke the atheist and call yourself the goddess. Green, gold, vibrant, and edgy be the woman, the god, the plants with the long vines and endless stretch. There is no limit to your queendom. Your hanging talent is bloodthirsty. You come in, you shake up the room. If they dare touch your leaves, they are never the same again. Period.
Okay. I can't even. This one is gonna literally, I'm gonna copy it and put it on my mirror because I was just like, me. She's talking about me right here. Thank you. This is exactly what I needed to hear today. Tell me, did you write this with someone in mind?
I wrote it with all my friends in mind because I'm always like, listen, girl, get it together. I'm always like, I'm the one that you call when you need solutions. Like, I'm not gonna sit there and be like, oh, well, I'm gonna be like, put something cute on. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. Let's figure out what we're gonna do. Let's come up with solutions and just get to it. Okay.
Yeah.
But I
Noted.
really think that something about just getting dressed up. Even in your shittiest moments, just getting like dressed up, just like putting, my mom's thing is like putting on some lipstick. My mom is like, she could be dying. And if she's going to the hospital, she's going to be wearing some lipstick on her way there.
Yes.
It's just like, but it's like having that energy of like, okay, but I've seen better days. And let me go water myself. Let me go get myself together and let me go figure it out because I am a green goddess. Okay. And I need to stay hydrated. Okay.
Okay, let's do this. Look, I had a number of questions for this piece, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip my questions because I've already asked you a lot, and I really want to make sure that our amigas have an opportunity to chat with you. So yes. I'm going to dive right in. Okay, let's see. Lina, Lina Cañon, if you are still with us, would you like to ask your question? Or I can ask it for you. Oh, there she is.
Absolutely. Lina, mi amor. It's been so long.
I know, it's so beautiful to see you vibing and thriving. And I was just wondering, I just ordered the book. I'm so excited. And I was just wondering, you spoke about writing this during COVID, writing this during like entry into motherhood. And I'm just wondering, what was the hardest to start? Like, which of the poems was like the one that you like couldn't get out your head? And what was the hardest to finish out of this collection?
That's a good one, Lina. Okay, Lina. Let me think. So the hardest to start. Okay, the hardest to start, I would say, is in part 2, the history of plantains. It was probably synonyms for stolen people, because I think there's just something really sensitive about not being able to pinpoint exactly where your ancestors come from. And it's like it's really nerve-wracking. It's really emotional because it's like, yo, like my people were stolen from me. Like my history was stolen from me. Like I don't know what languages they spoke. I don't know. Like, I mean, I have some ideas, there's a list of like 40 African countries that, folks who are Afro descendants from the Dominican Republic may come from. But it's just like, it's like really heartbreaking to know that like you can't trace your lineage back all the way through. And so writing synonyms for stolen people, I wanted to just kind of leave folks with this, the last line says, you must remember that although you were stolen, you have always been saved. And so it was hard to write it, but once I got to the end, I was like, you know what, let's end on the fact that we are beautiful and we're thriving and we're brilliant. And here we are, making do with what we have. And you said the easiest to write? The
hardest to finish.
Oh, the hardest to finish. Ooh, damn. I would say, the Dominican and Haitian flag exchange words, and it's like a contrapuntal poem that goes like up and down. That was really hard to finish because I was like, where do we go from here? Like the countries have there's so much tension culturally between the two, and because of the history of like, power and things like that, and just colonialism and all of that. And that was really hard to like, if I got this one shot to tell you to say something about what's happening between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And I really wanted to be sensitive to both sides and also be honest, and not deny the things that are happening, not lie, but be honest and then get us somewhere where we could move forward. And so, yeah, that was hard.
Thank you. Excited to read both of those.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Thank you for your question, Lina. The next question is from Jessica Salgado. Jessica, if you are still here, could you please unmute? And there you are.
This is like a reunion with all my girls who I never get to see.
So sorry for the extra noise. I'm at a coffee shop. But first of all, Mela, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. I love you so much. You know that I've been your biggest cheerleader since that day we
Oh my
met
God.
in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes, he's
Anyway,
been riding with me since like.
wait, I only have
what,
30
20?
seconds. Hold on. I only have 30 seconds. So this book is your baby. You have a human baby and now you have a book baby. And what are your dreams and goals for this baby? What do you want to see her grow up and do? And where do you want her to go? Like, tell us, and how can we support you as your community if she raised this baby?
Yeah, I just want as many people as possible to read her, just to like really get it in your bones. Like really, these poems I feel like are really to be read in community and then like take a break and discuss them, because there's so many elements of just like the themes are just so heavy, but also like so I was honest that I wanted to write something that folks could feel, and then also that transcends, right? And I think that a lot of the themes in this poem are just so timely to what's happening right now politically and socially around the country. I mean, you're seeing folks literally being bused to the East Coast because Texas doesn't want them and Florida doesn't want them. And I'm just like, what does even being a human these days even mean? Because I mean, it's like we're not treated fairly. We're not treated as we should. We're not treated as human beings. And so when I wrote this collection, I really wanted for folks to use the metaphor of the plantains to understand, you know, all of our humanities and how we can all come together, and how we can all become, right? Because becoming is not something you can do individually. Becoming is something you do in community. And that's really what I want the message to be. So just share it, you know, pass it along, have someone borrow it. Hopefully it'll get translated into a million different languages. I really just want this to be a whole conversation that we can have globally within our communities, you know?
Yes, congratulations. And for those of you
Thank
watching,
you, Bill.
please pre-order the book. Pre-ordering and buying it means Mela's gonna get more books. So if you want more books from Melania,
Please
or books from
pre-order.
people like Melania, we need to buy these books and call into bookstores and order it from bookstores so that it could count for her cell numbers. Okay, bye, I love you.
I love you.
Jessica, thank you for your question and for reminding all of us here to please pre-order. It's so important for our authors and for our community. When you pre-order, you're saying, I want this book. I need more books like this. Please give it to me. Dámelo. So please, if you haven't already, consider pre-ordering this book. It's so important for our writers.
I will say something I learned now that I am in the publishing business is that there are not enough of us. Not nearly enough. I mean, what you think, we're decimal point. We're decimal point in the overall perspective of publishing. So we really need all the support we can get. Because I mean, literally, it's like I was like looking up, because you know, now that I'm like, I gotta do my research, right? Because I knew nothing. So I came in here just like, oh, it's all just, you know, shits and giggles. I was like, oh, it's not shits and giggles, actually. We are not published at all. Okay. We need more of us to be in the rooms and to get these published and to be able to create. I mean, our stories are just not being told.
That's right. That's such a beautiful reminder, Melania. It's true. And I'm so excited for this book to be out into the world. I'm so thankful that you were able to give us your time and that you allowed We All Grow and the Latinas en Libros Book Club to be a part of your launch, and that you gave us a little sneak peek into the debut goodies. Amigas, so Melania, before we wrap, I just want to thank you again for sharing space with us. Congratulations. And thank you for putting it out there. Okay. I love this. I love this. And amigas, thank you for being here. If you haven't ordered or pre-ordered Melania's book, please consider doing it. It's so important. Ayla provided a couple of links in the chat where you can feel free to pick it up. And with that, amigas, tend to your garden, tend to your neighbor's garden, tend to, our gardens are connected. I love that, Melania. Thank you again for being here and for your words and for doing the work, for putting yourself out there and for being vulnerable and sharing your stories. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Amigas,
Thank you,
mil
everyone.
gracias for being here. That's a wrap for us today. We'll see you soon. Have a beautiful, beautiful night.